Yesterday was the first time that we actually got to go outside. You know, as you know, we're in New Jersey, so we've been practicing. We had about 10 practices inside already. We had some field time, we had some turf time, we had some cage time. So we've gone over some of the leading and the stealing and the pickoff moves. The first and thirds we've touched on a little bit, but we've really been focusing more in January and February on, you know, ground balls, fly balls, kind of the skill sets behind everything. But last night we were actually able to go outside. So we had an hour and a half practice outside, and you know, so we had to introduce, we broke the 12 players up into groups of 2. So we had 2 base runners, we had 2 on the right side of the infield, 2 on the left side of the infield, 2 on the pitcher's mound, and we had 2 catchers. So what we did was we had both of the pitchers get a chance to hold runners on. We got to work on our pickoff moves. We also got to work on stealing. So the kids were actually reading off of a real pitcher opposed to the coaches kind of going through the motions, so to speak. The kids were actually getting signs of, were they going to pitch or were they going to pick? And then the guys on first all had a chance to steal breaks, and we had to talk about looking in after the third step in case it was a fly ball or a ground ball. So I was standing in with the bat. I was telling the catcher the sign, so if he gave a pickoff, he knew that the pitcher was picking off. If I gave him number 1, I knew he was going to pitch the ball, and then I would either hit it or just let it go by, and he would work on throwing out the runner at second, or I would hit a ground ball or pop it up on purpose and make sure that the base runners were reading you know, the pitch and stuff like that. So since it was all their first times, there were some tears because there were a couple of balks in a row, so we had to stop everything. We had to make sure they came set, took a deep breath, and then picked, you know. So we were really, it was a lot of their first time, so it was a little bit stressful, but we had to just keep on talking about, hey, it's your first time. And everybody was making the same mistakes, right? Everybody was balking here and there, or, you know, some of the runners were forgetting to look in, of course. You know, so it was a challenging practice, but super fun, you know. And we've always had a goal sheet for players, and we handed those out at the end, but we also made a goal sheet for coaches, because we have to look at the practice plan, figure out what was good, figure out what wasn't good, and then jot down notes. So it kind of helps us get ready for tomorrow's practice. Tomorrow we're back inside. We have an hour on the field, and then we have 30 minutes in the cages. So whoever didn't throw live yesterday is going to throw live tomorrow. We're going to work on some of the things that we didn't do that well. So as a coach, just jotting down what we didn't do well and what we need to talk about helps me for tomorrow's game plan, because it's already finished. I already know what I'm doing. So that's kind of how my practice went yesterday. So how did yours go?
That's good. And I think it's important to make sure you slow down. I think sometimes we get, you know, we're excited to attack everything all at once. You know, after our practice last week, I sat down with my assistant coach, and we went over our game plan for the following practice, and he said, you know, I want to work on bunt defense, I want to work on first and thirds, I want to work on rundowns, I want to work on pop fly communication, and it all sounded really good because we wanted to get it all in our hour and a half practice, but we worked on bunt defense, and it took forever, and I think, you know, we get into a rush sometimes where we want to give them a crash course in everything instead of really slowing it down and really talking to them about the importance of knowing the situation, not just knowing the play. And that's the one takeaway that I had from practice is, you know, we call out our bunt defense play, and it's, you know, our third base where he's having the hard read. So for you coaches out there that don't know what that means, that's first and second, nobody out. Almost every Little League team is going to try to bunt in that situation. The offense is trying to bunt it at the third baseman because they want to advance the runners from first and second to second and third. So as a defense, our job is third baseman's going to hold his ground unless it's bunted right at him. The shortstop's going to cover second, the second baseman's going to cover first, the first baseman's going to crash, and the pitcher is going to crash, but also crash on the third base side, because as a defense, we want to try to get the force out at third. And it was funny because we were running the play correctly, but the kids they didn't really understand the purpose behind it and what our goal was. So I asked the guys, I said, in this situation right here, you know, what's our goal as the defense? And, you know, the third baseman raised his hand and he just said, hard read. Shortstop said, I got to go to second. So they knew what they were supposed to do, but they didn't really know that, okay, in this situation, this is what the offense is trying to do. This is what we're trying to do. So we're trying to get the force out at third, but if we don't get it, worst case scenario, we just get the out at first. So I think it's really going position by position, talking about what their responsibility is or what the play is called for, but then really explaining why we're doing it in that situation. And when we slowed it down like that, we explained it a little bit better. And it's good to ask questions, coaches. I think you have to really ask the players, what are you trying to do in this situation right here? What's our goal here as a defense, in bunt coverage, first and second, nobody out. And you'd be surprised. You'll get some funny answers because the kids literally told me exactly what they were supposed to do, but not really knowing why we were doing it. And it took some time. We didn't even get to first and thirds. We didn't get to run downs. It took a while to go through it, but I think they grasped it a lot better at the end.
And that brings me to a point that I'm thinking of that happened yesterday was, since they're stealing and their throws down to second base, what we saw a lot of times is one shortstop would run to the bag and he'd go behind the base. The catcher would throw the ball, it would hit the runner, and then it would go by, and we'd be like, hey, Mikey, get in front of the bag. Then we'd rotate, the next two guys would go up, and a different shortstop would make the same mistake. So instead of it happening all day long and all practice long, we blew the whistle, we all ran over to second base, we explained what we were talking about, why you get in front of the bag, so that way you can catch and tag opposed to being behind the base. And we kind of went through each base because it's the same exact thing when that happens. It was an awesome play I saw in NCAA softball. There was a fly ball to the right fielder. She caught it, she cannoned it to third, but the third baseman was on the outside of the base. So when the runner slid in, the ball hit the runner, ricocheted off, and then went flying into the outfield. The runner scored. Where if she would have been inside the bag, meaning if this is the base, right? If this is the base right here, and the ball's coming from right field, if I'm standing right here, I can catch and tag and she's out. But instead, the third baseman was back here. So when the throw was coming in, the girl slid and it took a hop, hit her, and went into the outfield. So we were talking about making sure that we're on the inside part of the base. And then it was funny that I just saw that, last night, and it was pretty much that's why we do it. So the moral of that is when the kids start doing something wrong, instead of just waiting and waiting and waiting, just stop, because maybe they don't understand what you're trying to say. Remember, especially at 11, 10, 9, 8, we know what the words mean, and we know why we're saying it, but they have no clue. So try to really keep it simple.